All right, so this is a stunning update. CNN is now calling for Democrats to give credit to President Trump. Also, the president sat down for an interview with NEWSMAX, and CNN is continuing to tell the brutal truth about Kamala Harris's political career. As usual, we'll show you what both sides are saying and give you the bottom line.
It might sound counterintuitive, but maybe what's in the party's best interest is to, dare I say, agree with Trump from time to time. Acknowledge wins on issues like NATO, trade, and the border, which have yielded some positive results, even while disagreeing with the way in which they came. It's a good thing that migration through our previously porous borders has slowed to a trickle, and that our NATO allies have agreed to increase their contribution from 2 to 5% of gross domestic product, and that the markets, despite having just had a rough week, have done well in the year to date. Inflation seems to be tamed. Plus, while Trump's tariff policy looked like it was implemented by the seat of his pants, thus far, all the doomsday fears have not panned out.
Okay, so this is the type of story that I love to see more often, especially from Democrats, because in my heart of hearts, I hope in the near future we can get back to a place in our country where it really doesn't matter what side you're on. We love to be American citizens, and we don't have a problem giving credit when credit is due. Now, what's happening here is he's calling on his audience and Democrats to give credit to President Trump when he does something right. And what's interesting, he had somebody from his audience already reject that type of thinking. And here's what he had to say about that. Take a listen.
In theory, yes, says Doty, but since Trump has not done anything positive in his latest administration, it's a moot point. Okay, come on. This is to the poll question and the premise, which is to say, Democrats and opponents of Donald Trump would have more credibility with people that they need to reach, not with one another. You already have them. If every once in a while they acknowledge that there's been an achievement with which they actually agree. Now, Doty just said, well, there haven't been any. I offered you two in my opening commentary. Is it not a good thing that the porous border crossings have slowed to a trickle? Is it not a good thing that our NATO allies have agreed to move from 2 to 5% of GDP? I think they're both good things. Why not say it? You'll enhance your credibility, not diminish it.
And that right there is the main reason why on this show, we always seek to show you what both sides are saying, because I want you to get the full picture and think for yourself. Make up your own conclusions. I'm not in the business of telling you what to think. That's number one. Number two, it's okay to give credit when a Democrat does something right, which we've done multiple times here. And it's also okay to criticize the president when he's doing something we disagree with. If we can't live in a world where those things are not allowed, then I don't know where we're going as a country, right? So I like that he pushed back on it. It seems like the smaller voices at CNN don't have a problem admitting the truth about President Trump, and the larger voices, they just can't do it. Now, take a look at his poll that he did during his show this morning, and I think it will shock you. Take a look at this.
Okay, Catherine, my producer, just asked me to predict the result, so I don't want to look at the screen. And I say I think people who vote will vehemently disagree with the poll question today. Let's see. Go ahead, show me the result. Whoa! Okay, well, you know there's no cheating. You know there's no cheating. 76, all right, well, that means you found me compelling. 76% agree with the premise. See, it's in the best poll. All right, I'm impressed. 3/4 say, yeah, you know what? It's in the Democrats' best interest if every once in a while they give Trump credit on something that he's done with which they agree.
And you know who actually does that in Congress? It's Senator John Fetterman. He doesn't have a problem saying that President Trump is right or he's winning on this issue and Democrats are losing on this issue. He tells it like it is. And that's why I believe he's still there. And that's why I believe the Democrat Party doesn't like him right now, right? And that's why they've been treating him the way that they have. But it doesn't distract from the point that it's okay to say when Trump is winning. And that's exactly what he did yesterday. Take a look at this.
I'm wondering if you think right now Trump is winning the trade war. Do you agree with those who think he is?
I mean, absolutely. Well, I think that, I mean, obviously what happened with the EU, and again, I'm a huge fan of Bill Maher. And I mean, I think he's really one of the oracles for my party. And he acknowledged, it's like, hey, he thought that the tariffs were going to tank the economy, and he acknowledged that it didn't. So, I mean, so for me, it's like, I mean, again, it seems like the EU thing has been going well, and I guess we'll see how it happens with China.
Speaking of President Trump, he did have an interview with NEWSMAX, and he talked about multitude of issues that happened over the week, starting with the job report numbers. Here's what he had to say about that.
There have been a lot of questions, and we fired her because we didn't believe the numbers today. Even though interest rates are too high, we have a terrible head of the Fed. He keeps interest rates too high, and I could understand that, but I don't believe those numbers. I think because we're doing so well, and we fired her. This is not something from just now. This was before the election, where she got, meaning Kamala. We thought it was Biden, but it turned out being Kamala, where they got very, very strong numbers. I said, what's this all about? And they adjusted them, and then later on they adjust them, I guess, downward. But we don't want that. We want straight numbers. I was thinking this morning when I saw the numbers, I said, who makes these numbers anyway? I never gave it much thought other than before the election, but it didn't work out too well. For them, I won the election. So maybe people don't believe it or whatever, but I was saying to myself, I wonder who does this. And when I checked, I said, this person is very suspect to me.
Okay, so let's remind ourselves of what's going on here, and I'm just going to give you guys all sides to it. Number one, it is a fact that these numbers continue to be revised. Doesn't matter who's president. This happens all the time because the way they collect the data, it's always an estimate to begin with, and then 1 month later they have to change it. So it'll be interesting to see if that number gets revised 30 days from now, whether it's a revision where the numbers go up or it's a revision where the numbers go down. But look for that, okay? Number two, President Trump firing this individual is well within his authority. So for all the people screaming that he did something that was unlawful or it's unconstitutional, you could throw that out the window. Number three, which I think is probably one of the most sound reactions here, if there has been a history that can be proven that the numbers have been manipulated, then it makes sense for the president to fire this person. But it needs to be proven. Show us the actual facts, okay? Number four, which I find to be ridiculous, CNN is suggesting the idea that President Trump making this decision is him being anti-Semitic. Take a listen to this.
We should point out this is an official that was confirmed by a Republican Senate by an overwhelming number. I think it was 86-8. And on top of that, despite the accusations from President Trump during the Biden administration, she actually revised numbers down at a significant clip. Have past presidents complained about the jobs numbers and taken action in this way to call for the firing of these commissioners?
Yes. And I'm not suggesting that there's a parallel here, but one of the darkest moments in presidential history was when President Nixon believed there was a Jewish American conspiracy in his administration. It was a product of his anti-Semitism. And he sought to demote any Jewish person in the administration who had power. And he focused on the Bureau of Labor Statistics because he saw the unemployment rate, as does President Trump, as politically significant. He believed there was a conspiracy of Jewish economists who were playing with the numbers and playing with the interpretation. Of course, it was totally false. And as I said, it's one of the dark moments in American presidential history. As a result of President Nixon's pressure, the commissioner of the Bureau was pushed aside, and some of the Jewish economists were demoted. President Trump sees his own conspiracy. It's a Biden conspiracy. And as a result, he's trying to do, in effect, the same thing Richard Nixon did. And it's sad because the Bureau of Labor Statistics is a nonpartisan statistical agency.
All right, so just a couple of things there. First, he says there's no connection, but he makes the connection and he compares them. So if there's no connection, why are you comparing them in the same sentence? Wow, that is crazy. And number two, if the Labor Bureau and Statistics is a nonpartisan organization, I think that exact language no longer holds water today, because we've learned that the nonpartisan organizations like NPR, PBS, agencies that claim to never be weaponized by the government, it's been proven over and over again that is false. So I think I'm going to take the more conservative route and believe that they are partisan and that they have manipulated the numbers. I don't have the facts to that because I have no supporting documentation to prove it. I'm not in the room. But if I just read the room of the federal government and its history over the past decade, I'm going to lean that way instead.
What message is Trump trying to send?
Can I just say,
because he's trying to send a message, and he's been
well,
super
I think
clear
he raises
about it.
a very valid point.
What message is he trying to send?
I think he raises a very valid point about these revisions of numbers. I know that is standard in what they do, but whether it was under the Biden administration or whether it's under this one, today's was 258,000 jobs. We talk about giving certainty to businesses and this economy. What kind of certainty is it to say?
Do you understand how the labor statistics surveys work?
Absolutely.
Well, then if you did,
so how are they off by that much?
Because they are doing surveys. They are doing surveys to try to understand the labor picture in the United States. And as the months go by, they get more information from employers, from households, and they add that information to get a more accurate picture of what happened in the prior 30 days. So it's actually a statistical process that is designed to, in real time, correct based on new information. It's quite the opposite of what you're suggesting.
No, we can't
the revisions are not a
cover-up.
The revisions are transparency.
I'm not arguing what the president's arguing. I'm saying if they're off by 800,000 up or down, or 258,000 this time, what kind of certainty is that?
Okay, it's not certainty, it's science. How can they do a better job so you don't have to have those revisions?
So,
right? What's wrong with by the way, what's wrong with asking that question?
And so I wanted to play you guys that clip because that is a phenomenal question to ask. I mean, listen, if we post numbers that says there was 300,000 jobs, the next month it gets revised down to 100,000 jobs, that's a 200,000 difference. What's going on there? You mean we can't come up with a system that can at least get it 80% of the way there, 90% of the way there as far as accuracy is concerned? Are we not allowed to question the numbers? Is President Trump not allowed to fire people he wants to fire in his administration? I mean, they cry that he's a fascist and he wants to control, but it seems to me that they want to control him and what he does and what he says. So there you go. All right. So getting back to the president in this interview, he also responded to the issue regarding Jeffrey Epstein. Take a listen.
Your Deputy Attorney General sat down with Ghislaine Maxwell for 9 hours. I'm just wondering when the American people get to hear what she said during that interview.
Well, I don't know because I haven't spoken about it, but he's a very talented guy, Todd Blanche, and a very straight shooter.
Yeah.
And I think he probably wanted to know, just to get a feeling of it, because we'd like to release everything, but we don't want people to get hurt that shouldn't be hurt.
Yeah.
And I would assume that was why he was there. I want to release everything. I just don't want people to get hurt. You can't have people associated. First of all, the files were run by some very bad people and very sick people like Comey and Lisa, the whole group, all those people in that office. They ran those files for 4 years. And if they were going to use the files, they would have used it before my election. Right. Because unless they're stupid, which to a certain extent they are stupid.
You're saying they would have released the information?
Well, they had the files. They control the files.
Yes.
I didn't control the files. They control the files for 4 years. So if they had something, they would have released it before the election. Because they are not geniuses, but, they're evil.
Right.
There are a lot of evil people. So I can't really tell you much other than Todd went in. And I think he just wants to make sure that innocent people aren't hurt. But you'd have to speak to him about it.
So I guess it begs the question, what do you guys believe? Do you believe all of the files are just made up and this is an entire hoax manufactured by Biden and Obama? Or do you believe there is something here, that the files are real? I'm not saying there's a list. It doesn't really matter. And more importantly, what do you make of this new update? Ghislaine Maxwell has been moved from Florida to a Texas prison. That's number one. And number two, NEWSMAX continues to float the idea that not only is she innocent, but she should be released. Take a listen.
That's why I'm not taking anything without skepticism from anybody, especially the media, especially the government, especially the Department of Justice. And I don't care, quite frankly, who it's about, including Ghislaine Maxwell and to a lesser extent, Jeffrey Epstein. All right. I say lesser extent. Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to the sex stuff in 2008, all right? He's a dirtbag monster. Does that mean Ghislaine Maxwell is? I don't think so, folks. That's not the way our society works, not the way it's supposed to work at all. There is so much exculpatory evidence here that nobody understands, that it looks like the government kept from the defense, which is illegal, juror misconduct, you name it. And look at what happened in that court, right? Prosecutor pointing the finger, all right? Just remember this image for a moment, all right? Ghislaine Maxwell's on the left. It's COVID, right? So hardly anybody's there. And the attorney, the government attorney, doesn't have to wear a mask, pointing her finger right there at Maxwell.
Okay, so I guess what you're going to have to answer in the comment section for me is if Ghislaine Maxwell had a hand in what Jeffrey Epstein was doing, is that enough for her to rot away in prison? Or do you believe she has been unfairly treated and she should be released and she's innocent? I mean, because that's really the question that needs to be answered, because we have one side who claims she should be released. You just heard it. And then you have other people who are saying absolutely not. I'd love to know where you guys stand on this issue, because for the life of me so far, with everything I read, and she lost a civil suit, by the way. So it's not as if Ghislaine Maxwell never committed any crimes. She did. So I guess the question is this narrative that she should be released. I just don't understand why it exists and why they keep hammering that, you know, especially when you're talking about someone who was grooming and trafficking young women. I just assume that that is a hard no for most people. Maybe I am wrong. You guys let me know in the comment section. Now, let's move to something else that he said during this interview that was also interesting. This is in response to the failed advertising from Bud Light and also the successful ad from American Eagle that had Sydney Sweeney in it. Take a look.
Your administration has been very open about the fact that American women are not having enough babies. We know that you have addressed this. There was an ad this week. Sydney Sweeney, an actress, was in an ad for blue jeans. Yeah. The ad is doing very well. It's very popular. The jeans are sold out. Does America need to see more ads like that and maybe fewer ads with people like Dylan Mulvaney on the cover?
Well, I think the Dylan Mulvaney ad was perhaps the most unsuccessful ad in history. It knocked $35 billion off the value of a certain company. You know what I'm talking about. That was one of the great disasters of all time. I would say it was probably the most unsuccessful ad, worst ad ever. You know, advertising's a very funny thing. I've done ads where I thought they were lousy and they turned out to be iconic. And then I've done some that I thought were beauties, they're going to be fantastic, and they weren't so good. So to each his own. But the Dylan Mulvaney ad was a total disaster.
And you know what's interesting about that? There was another ad that was a disaster, and it was Jaguar. It was just reported today that the CEO is stepping down after sales have plummeted. Obviously, the marketing campaign was woke. They released this design of an electric vehicle that clearly no one's driving on the street today. And they radically changed their entire vehicle lineup. I mean, I remember, by the way, and this is how I grew up, my adopted mother, she had a Jaguar. They were iconic. If you guys remember, they used to have the Jaguar where there were two fuel tanks, one on each side. I mean, I thought that was pretty crazy. The point being here is when you go woke, you go broke. And everybody knows that at this point. So,
a former president of Russia, who's now in charge of one of the most important councils, Medvedev, said some things that were very bad, talking about nuclear. And when you mention the word nuclear, I say, you know, my eyes light up and I say, we better be careful, because it's the ultimate threat. He shouldn't have said it. He's got a fresh mouth. He said things in the past too. And so we always want to be ready. And so I have sent to the region 2 nuclear submarines. I just want to make sure that his words are only words and nothing more than that.
Now, of course, the criticism for President Trump making that decision, which doesn't really matter in the end, is really coming from Democrats, where they claim his foreign policy is dictated by what people say on social media. And that is so far from the truth. I think his foreign policy has been much more successful than Biden ever could be and ever was. So there's that. Okay, and another thing that everybody knows is that Kamala Harris has no business running for elected office again. And what's interesting is, as I told you earlier in the video, the smaller names that people don't really know about at CNN They seem more motivated to tell the truth about what's going on in politics. And here's an example of that. So Harry Ensign, he literally blows up Kamala Harris. Okay, take a listen to this.
I just can't possibly believe that someone who was Attorney General for a good period of time, a United States Senator for a good period of time, and then Vice President for 4 years, and then ran for President, all of a sudden believes that the best way to solve it is from being outside the system? Oh, please. Not a chance on God's green earth that that's necessarily the case. What's probably going on is she saw what the polling numbers were, perhaps, for her running for governor of California. Yes, she has left open the idea that maybe she could run in 2028 for the Democratic nomination. But I'll tell you, Abby, I've looked at those numbers. She would be the weakest front runner since 1992. So the bottom line is this. She's looking at the numbers. She knows what's cooking. And then all of a sudden, you know what? Actually, this lifelong politician, I want to be outside the system. Give me a break.
Okay, so yeah, it's literally what we said yesterday. I mean, she just can't hack it emotionally. She won't put herself through that again. Listen, I respect that. I mean, bow out now. Don't put yourself in that position because now you know exactly how it feels. And is it really worth it in the end? Probably not. I mean, let's just be honest here. And there's so many people on the left that wants to become president, like a Gavin Newsom. So if people had to choose between her and Newsom, I think they'd probably choose him, unfortunately.
Maybe she should have plugged in at the border when she was vice president, right? That's what was broken. And what we see now in the short amount of time, we saw the numbers that came out today were staggering in terms of the border issues are gone. 90% difference from when the Biden administration was in there. That falls at her feet. That falls at her feet. Look,
I don't know if you can trust those numbers. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, well, if
what number can we trust from?
You know, I think everyone can agree, and we've said it on this show, Democrats and Republicans alike. Border crossings, border problems, border crimes are at a record low, and that fell right at her feet. And what was broken was our country and our border as a direct result of what she was charged with protecting.
Yeah, so it just makes too much sense. Okay, everybody knows this about her. Failed vice president. Failed administration. If anybody wants to scream at the top of their lungs about why they hate what President Trump is doing, why don't you voice that anger towards your own party who produced the conditions that was helpful for President Trump to win the 2024 election? And of course, they'll never do that because they're immune, because they are allergic to looking in the mirror and taking responsibility. And a perfect example of that is here is Tim Tampon Walz, stolen valor Walz, by the way, who continues to support the idea that she would be a great leader for the Democrat Party and she should run for president in 2028. Take a listen.
On Vice President Harris, again, just your reaction to her announcing that she's not going to run for governor.
Yeah.
And she's leaving the door open. I spoke to some of her advisors and leaving the door open.
Well, she's been a great governor. I talked to her about it, and we talked about what it's like to be a governor. But if this is the right decision for her, and as I've said, that I think Kamala Harris would make an outstanding president. I think we would not be in the mess we're in right now. And if she chooses to run, that's good for the country.
Yeah, you know what? Two things are disturbing about what he is saying. One, it's the people who continue to defend Biden's decisions surrounding the border, including Kamala Harris. Okay, the money that was spent that never led to anywhere. For the record, the second thing that is disturbing, that they still won't admit that there was a border crisis and that what President Trump has done is a positive thing. It goes back to the beginning of this video. Why is it so hard for Democrats to just say, hey, you know what, on this particular issue, when it comes to border security, not deportations, not immigration, just border security, President Trump has done a great job. It's just fascinating that they just can't bring it to themselves to do it. All right, so let's hear from you guys in the comment section below to Michael Smerconish. He's the show that he has on the weekends for CNN, telling Democrats to finally give some credit to President Trump. It might not be a bad thing. What do you guys make of that? And also Harry Ensign from CNN. Again, these two people are not the big names at the network, but they don't have a problem telling the truth about President Trump and also the Democrat Party. Then let me get your guys' reaction to President Trump and his interview with NEWSMAX. Where are you as it pertains to the Jeffrey Epstein file situation? Do you agree that more than likely everyone is in that list? on both sides of the aisle. So the chances of anything really being released is probably not going to happen. And also, what do you guys think of Ghislaine Maxwell being moved from Florida to Texas, where some people are speculating this is her being in a position to possibly get pardoned by the president? Just let me know your guys' thoughts about everything in the comment section below. Now, yesterday, President Trump issued a chilling warning to the former president of Russia by positioning 2 nuclear subs near Russia. Also, the Cincinnati mayor and officials pulled an insane stunt during their press conference as they react to the fight that went viral. So if you missed out on those stories and more from yesterday, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.